My name is Chris. I'm a student here at the University of Waterloo, and my guide dog, you can't see him on camera right now, he's sleeping, but he's a 7.5-year-old yellow lab named Sherwood. I have a few different hobbies. I read a lot. I listen to podcasts sometimes. I obviously like to listen to music. I've seen a lot of live bands around here in Waterloo, play on stage myself sometimes, and lately I've been starting up a radio show on an amateur radio station here in Waterloo. I study public health sciences here at Waterloo. I'm doing my master's degree. I've always sort of been involved in the health field, just even as a result of having my eye condition. And then there's been a lot of health practitioners in my family, and so it was always something that kind of interested me, and it was like a big part of my life. I ended up in public health studies as an undergrad, and then I decided to continue on with public health for my master's. I've always had poor sight as a result of an eye condition that I've had since birth, known as retinopathy of prematurity. That's where the retina doesn't form properly in the back of the eye. And that's given me poor eyesight from the time I was born all the way until university. And it was somewhat usable. I could read a little bit if the print was very large. I had just enough vision to walk around without a cane or without a guide dog. And then come university, that little bit of residual eyesight started to deteriorate in the second half of my first year here at Waterloo. And unfortunately, by the time I started second year, I had no sight at all. Navigating into new areas was very challenging. Sherwood obviously helps with that, but especially at the beginning when my vision deteriorated, I didn't have Sherwood at the time, so it was quite challenging. There's a stat that a lot of people throw around that the vast majority of people who are working age and blind are unemployed. I'd say the issue is more that people are underemployed rather than completely unemployed. A lot of people can find jobs, but a lot of times that work isn't necessarily full-time, and it's not necessarily maybe something they've been trained for. It might just be something they're sort of able to do, but with minimal assistance. I'm looking into a few different places to work. I'm currently volunteering at a local hospital in Waterloo. I'm working on their accessibility committee. I really have enjoyed that work. So if I can get a job in maybe their patient relations department, patient experience, that could be interesting. I'm also looking at jobs in health units or health departments for public health. Obviously, that's right up my alley given my master's research and training. And I've also been looking into UX or UI type jobs with some tech companies here in Waterloo, particularly from an accessibility standpoint, and actually combine some of the stuff that I've done with my public health background, just sort of inclusivity, accessibility, and then that could be an interesting opportunity too. For my phone and laptop, I use what's called screen reader or text-to-speech software. I use a different one on the computer and a different one on the phone, those being JAWS for Windows and iOS VoiceOver, respectively. They do essentially the same thing, which is they read out the content on the screen and read text. They can describe images. That's sort of in its infancy, but it's definitely the image description has come a very long way in the last couple of years. And then they also allow me to write as well, so they speak out what I type. So for school, the majority of my reading and writing is done on the computer and the phone using the text-to-speech software that I just talked about. But especially if I need to make presentation notes or have a list of things that I need to remember sort of while using the computer for other things, I will use Braille as well. Other things like watching TV, Netflix, movies, TV shows, they often use what's called audio description or descriptive video services. And that's basically providing a narrator or narration track over top of the standard TV or movie audio. And what they'll do is they'll fill in the gaps where there's no dialogue during like an action scene or a quiet scene in the movie, and essentially provide a play-by-play of what's going on. The image description for the text-to-speech software, with all the new advances in image processing and AI, I've seen it go from something that's somewhat useful to really, really useful in sort of the blink of an eye. Just the other day, actually, I was planning out an event for the Health Graduate Committee. The guy I was chatting with over text texted me a few different images, and using the image description software on my phone, I was able to have a very good idea of what was going on in a lot of pictures that he sent, which was something I would have never been able to do even just 1 or 2 years ago. I've seen demonstrations of various pieces of tech that will basically provide real-time video description. What I've seen is that you sort of will talk to it close to or similar to how you'd use Siri on your phone. You'd hold up your phone and it would provide sort of a real-time description of what's around you based on what you ask. So that, I think, will be extremely helpful going forward. The university has been doing a really good job at providing accommodations for people who are blind. On the new parts of campus, you can really see this. So in the new Student Life Center, for example, they have tactile markers on the tops of stairs or ramps to tell Sherwood and I that we're getting close to a ledge. In the elevators, they have very clear sounds. Second floor. And braille markings telling us, which floor we're on and which floor we're going to. And the room numbers also will have braille markings on them as well, which is very helpful. And even in the older parts of campus, some upgrades have been made. I would like to see more, but overall they've been doing a very good job. Once my eyesight deteriorated past a certain point, it became really clear really quickly that I would need a better way of navigating besides just using a white cane, or what people might call a walking stick. Obviously that was doable, but it was much slower than what I was used to in walking around in everyday life. And I knew that guide dogs were an option, so I decided to apply. Starting off, you send in like an online form and some paperwork, you fill out a lot of documentation, and you send that into the trainers. In this case, Sherwood's trainers were Canadian Guide Dogs for the Blind, based out of Ottawa. Once all the paperwork was done and they make sure that you're a good candidate for a guide dog, they have like an interviewer come to your house and they'll talk to you about sort of how do you walk in an area that's familiar to you. They will match the dogs that are available to your lifestyle as best as possible. It really reminded me almost of like applying for a job. And in many ways, taking care of Sherwood is a full-time job. Once Sherwood was ready, I went to the training center. They put you up in a dorm and you live in the training center in Ottawa for about 3 weeks. They taught me all the basics of caring for a dog. They taught me obviously how to walk with Sherwood, all the different commands that he would need to know, very basics like taking his vest off, putting his vest on, putting his harness on and off, and then just basic care and grooming as well. I'm treating him obviously as if he's my own dog, but he's more on loan to me from the trainers. And then the trainers will actually come in and do checkups to make sure he's doing well at his guiding, he's following the commands. So it's a very good system. So I was really fortunate to go with Canadian Guide Dogs for the Blind out of Ottawa. One of the perks of going with them is that there is no cost to adopting a guide dog. I think there is a minimal, like, sort of $1 symbolic sort of fee for like the paperwork and things like that. But there is no real true cost to adopting the dog, which is great. Thankfully, there's some very generous donors that fund the training center and make sure that can continue, and they're able to provide access to guide dogs at pretty much no cost to the clients. As I said before, navigation is a real challenge for someone who's totally blind. Sherwood really helps with that. He knows all the routes that I take around campus, so he knows my route from my dorm to the lecture halls that I will go to. He knows the route from my dorm to my office. He knows how to get to the cafeteria. That's his favorite place to go. He has a great memory. He really knows all those routes, and he just helps to ease the burden and the stress that I have to deal with if I'm navigating on my own using my cane. Like a mental health perspective, it really helps. And then, of course, when he's off duty, as a companion animal, it's great to have him around as well. That's a great bonus. And so once again, it's just a very relieving feeling to have Sherwood around in my daily life. When I'm walking up to people by myself with my cane, it can be a little bit awkward. People may not have ever talked to someone who's blind or even with a disability at all. But with Sherwood, it's a great icebreaker, especially if the person's an animal lover. He's such a gentle dog that he can really make even people who aren't necessarily animal lovers feel at least a little bit at ease. So with that being said, as much as people might enjoy Sherwood's presence, it's not a good idea to pet him while he's on duty. He has a job to do, and if you do pet him, he is a very friendly dog, so he will get distracted and he'll want to go say hi to you, or he'll want to, get more of that attention. So obviously, there's a very good reason why you should not be petting him. It's for his safety, it's for my safety. To tell if Sherwood's on duty, it's pretty easy. He has a harness that he wears. It's very brightly colored. It's white and yellow, fluorescent colors. Anyone can see that he's wearing it. And he has a big sign on his harness that says, "Please do not pet me, I am working." So it's very clear that he is working and that you should not pet him. And I would obviously really appreciate when people respect that. One of the biggest, pet peeves I would have is that if I stop someone on the street and I ask, "Where is the cafeteria here on campus?" Most of the time the person will say, "It's that way," or "Go over there," and they'll point to the cafeteria. But again, Sherwood is not able to see where the person's pointing. He can maybe see where the person's pointing, but he may not understand what that means. And then, of course, I can't see where the person's pointing. So the person, instead of pointing, gives me directions that are clear and concise. So the cafeteria, instead of being over there, the cafeteria is behind you at 6 o'clock, or it's off to your right at 3 o'clock. Very basic directions that I can follow and then give to Sherwood. I've definitely faced challenges, but I have lots of support from my friends, my family, from Sherwood. If I face any circumstances that are too much for me to handle on my own, I always have someone or somewhere that I can turn to. It's very rare that I would say I feel truly unfortunate about my circumstances.